Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me start by giving a shout out to Raider Robinson for the Cash App donation. Thank you from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. Um, it's been quite the 24 hours lately. My wife and I had a bit of a stressful talk, which is not her fault. It's the way that my former employer is now treating her because she's still with them for a few more days. And um, there is also, additionally, there is, I got to sleep late because of stress. Woke up this morning tired. We had exams, and I knew that they were going to be N words, which they were. Big man and skinny showed up late. Big man 20 minutes late, but he wrote his behind off, though. He churned out a hell of an essay. And it was him. It was him that did it. Then um, Skinny showed up an hour late and he wrote a sentence. He gave up. And that's because this time he had to sit right next to my desk. And so, since cheating was not going to be something he could do, he had to sit right next to my desk, do what he could. And the funny thing is, he doesn't wear the shamag to class, but he wore it today. And I knew what was going on. Um, I'm only saying this to say that this dysfunction is not something that we lead in. That's not the case. Um, we get away with less of it, but we don't lead in it. When you stop and think about it, how hard were you willing to work at cheating when you were a kid in school? And did you go to university? If you cheated in high school, did you go to university and keep cheating your way through? Did you think you could? Hell, if you cheated your way through high school, were you able to get into a university that was worthwhile? You probably weren't. That's the difference. Cheating is a major problem here, and it's a major problem in China. And these are nations where you're supposed to find the least of it. Anyway, with that being said, allow me to tell you my reason for opening this up has to do with um, it has to do with a lesson that Kevin Samuels taught us. I don't normally talk about Kevin Samuels because he's passed away, and I stopped mentioning him that much when he passed away for obvious reasons. And we Muslims don't say rest in peace anyway. Now, we have something we say for a Muslim that passed away, but even that is not rest in peace. And so, um, I've generally avoided making much mention, but he did teach lessons. He did show us certain things, and there are things other people did in response that taught us a lot. I do not agree with his take on cheating if you are a high value man and you marry. I do agree with polygyny, not adultery. I don't think that black men of any value level should give up the moral high ground, and adultery does do that. Um, Again, I do believe in polygyny. As a matter of fact, I believe in making that the default. But I also want to say to the men, um, when he passed away, what would have been peace talks pretty much became all out a propaganda war, escalated beyond what it was previously. He simply told the women about what they would qualify for. Just that became uh, impetus enough for the bulk of Western black women to say two things about him. No, three things about him. One, that he was 9AY. And as I stated, that man was effete and somewhat effeminate in his ways, especially before he became the Kevin we remember at the end of his life. But I stated, even I stated before, that if he really was into men and he lived in Atlanta, he would not be allowed to be this famous without someone coming forward and saying, yep, he'd be banging dudes. Somebody would have done that. It's Atlanta. None of them jumped out and said, nobody from that particular community jumped out and even stated that he was. No one did such. Plus, the other thing, too, was that even if someone had done that in Atlanta, hell, if I became famous and I lived in Atlanta, they would jump out and somebody would jump out and point a finger at me, partially due to mistaken identity, because I've been mistaken for somebody before, but he was straight. But then also because, well, like I said, it's Atlanta and many communities there are just messy as all get out. It's not just one community that's like that, but it's Atlanta. As a matter of fact, if I became famous and I was living in Atlanta, somebody who's straight would have jumped out and said that. It wouldn't have been somebody from the community of interest in the same gender that would have jumped out and said that. It would have been somebody that was straight. Or it would have just been sisters that would have jumped out and said, he's into dudes. They would have lied. The fact that nobody had the gall to come out and say this about him means he was not involved with dudes. That's the first thing. But they also stated that he hated black women and that he hated women. Because of what he was willing to tell them that they did not deserve if they weren't going to give in exchange for it, they said that he hated women. I want you to stop and think about that. He tried to help black couples get together, and he wasn't allowed that. Even he, Mr. High Value Kevin Samuels, could not get with a sister, and it wasn't his fault. He came out, he told the truth. The only closet out of which he came was a closet of knowing how ucked fuck sisters are. That's the closet out of which he came. And after that, he had to admit it was a wrap for him with sisters. They can say what they want about the ethnicity of the woman in whose arms he died. Now, I'm not making light of fornication because I'm Muslim, but by the complainants or the plaintiff's own standard, the fact remains that that's not their issue. It's the fact that she was Latin American and she wasn't an Afro Latina, as far as they know. That's what bothers them. But they wrote him off. He was actually in favor of black couples getting together. They wrote him off because he said, to get what you want, you must give what the man you wants in exchange. You must give at least comparable in value. And they said, oh, hell no, because they'd been entitled. He challenged their entitlement the same way he had been challenging men's entitlement for years. And they flipped the uck fout. But the other thing that we learned is that when he passed away, they danced on his grave. So in his life, he showed us that they will take no accountability. Western women in general, and especially Western black women, they would not accept accountability. When he passed away, though, they danced on his grave and even talked about putting roots on him. Now, this was when we learned one thing that was even more important. Their hatred for us is a religion. I want that to be kept in mind. Their hatred for us is a religion. They, and it's part of that witchcraft religion. And make no bones about it, witchcraft is a religion. Now, it doesn't matter which strand of witchcraft. I'm going to count it as one religion because you might say some mumbo jumbo and cut a chicken's throat. And you don't actually hear any spirits talking back to you, but the fact that you're talking to them in order to cast a spell on someone, well, that's enough. Now, cutting a chicken up to an idol, I don't necessarily count as witchcraft right off the bat. But nonetheless, if you ask that spirit or that idol to do something uh, to benefit or to harm someone, that's witchcraft. If you do any sort of rituals in order to initiate you into ranks that then get to have communication with spirits you don't see or around whom you might see smoke as a strange apparition. If that is the case, I'm going to tell you now, that's witchcraft. And I'm going to tell you something else about that witchcraft. You have communities of men and women alike that do it. They don't do stuff like this as communities without there being results. They do these things and they get results. Now, you can apply for protection from this. There's a way to apply. There are ways to apply for protection. You can ask Bilal of the features about that. You can ask Amu Yum Yum. But it's not that I don't know anything, but they know more than I do. So that's why I mentioned them. Hell, you can ask Abdullah bin Bobby. He studied too. He'll know some things about that. When you go that route, um, at some point you will hear from someone whom you cannot see, giving you instructions or asking you questions. You'll give a reply, you'll do what they say, and then you're going to hear about the results for which you were requesting from them. A curse or something like that. So I'm saying that to say that the witchcraft is not a joke now. How much it had an effect on him, I'm not in a position to debate. It would call for too much speculation. But I'm quite sure that a bunch of them tried. And if a bunch of these so called sisters tried, then I'm sure that a bunch of spirits tried him too. He can't tell us now, but he probably had several strange dreams and nightmares in the last few nights of his life, whether they succeeded in doing anything to his heart or not. I bet you he had several strange dreams and nightmares. I'm sure they were trying. I don't want you guys to sleep on this. If you are going to, and I talked about this before, if you are going to roar into the Passport Bros or SYSBM or IBMOR or Passport Gang, if you're going to show for yourself with your passport, then you must start to ask for this sort of protection frequently. You must do so because, frankly, they hate you so much that the thought of you not suffering is enough to send some of them into a frenzy. You simply having relaxation and women not vexing you is enough to send some of them into a frenzy. And we learned this seeing the reaction to Kevin Samuels passing away, his decease. Simply put, what I'm saying is that what he showed us by, or rather the reactions to him in his life and during his death, showed us what I said previously. It's war. It's not just a conflict. It's not a negotiation. It's not a disagreement. It's war. They want us separated from our resources so that they can use those resources to raise the children by the men they think are genetically fit to breed. And even that is partially dependent, actually largely dependent, on how moral a man is not. Jawline and muscles and all of these things do have a lot to do with it. But understand this too. It is also about what type of responsibility that man does not show. That is equally important. It's also that has everything to do with it. And so if you're not willing to accept that, which most of you are not, there's nothing in it for you. They actually hate you. They determine at that point you are useless. You are worthless. You were just like the guy in the basement of his mom's house playing video games, doing nothing to benefit the women of the society. I'm not joking. That's one of the reasons that when you start to question what's in it for you, vocally they jump out and start calling you all kind of incels and losers and sitting in your mama's basement, and they start with all of that because what they're saying is that guy that's always at home and never out changing our tires and working hard and doing these things that we want men to do except break our backs and conceive are useless. And now you're useless because you're saying that you're going to be about as useful as those guys. That's what that's about. It's war, gentlemen. And the propaganda war is there so that you will feel worthless to them, even when you're not, so that you'll work harder to be worth more and you won't demand anything in exchange. Make you feel worthless so that you'll simp in order to feel worth something. And that leads me to the next thing I'm going to say, and then I'm done. Simps should know, but it seems they act like they don't know, but I'm sure they do. They know that simping is not going to get them the draws. But this is the thing that simps need to be told. And if one of them is willing to listen to you calmly, then at least say this to them. Not only is it not going to get you the draws, because the simp will probably say, I'm not really chasing the draws. Okay, that's fine. The problem is that simping, you need to tell these simps if they'll listen. The problem is that simping gets them a negative respect from the women. Therefore, nobody's going to smash. Simping actually gets them labeled as community eunuchs, and that's not fair to the men. That's not fair to the simps. And that's what they need to realize if they're willing to listen at all. Yada is a major part of that problem. What's your name? 50,000. No, no, Yada. Close your mouth, bro. Why do I say that? If Yada preaches this stuff, he's only going to feed his wife's materialism by just preaching this stuff, but she's not going to actually respect him. And if she doesn't respect him, she won't lay down with him. And she's still going to be angry if he lays down with somebody else. If she doesn't love him, she still thinks that she's going to have a eunuch. And there's this something in these Westernicians that makes them want a pet eunuch. He walked right into that. So if you're going to have any conversation with simps at all, the conversation would not really be just to tell them it's not going to get them the draws, but to tell them that part of the reason they don't get affection from women that they don't get is because they simping. I'm not saying that if they turned around and they were a super red pill, the chicks would come falling at their feet. It wouldn't be that. But they are guaranteeing that they're going to be disrespected by simping. Guaranteed they will be disrespected every turn. Truth be told, when men simp, the women barely believe it. That's the funny thing. I hope that what I've said helps. Thank you for listening as always. Black Heart, Black Mind, Blackout. Assalamu alaikum and black. Heterosexual, non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Airways, with Jet Black is also a verb. Keep Jet Black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.